Hey, welcome back, Tribe. This is the new ASWB exam 2023 question format with 3 answer choices of A, B, and C, also known as RayTube practice question number 27, so stay tuned. Okay, so let's dive into it. A social worker meets with a client to complete an assessment. The client is having difficulty comprehending what the social worker is saying as the client's primary language is different from the social worker. What should the social worker do? A, request for an interpreter. B, ask the client's family member to translate. Or C, inform the client that services cannot be provided due to the language barrier. Take a second, pause the video, reread through the question, reread through the answer choices, select your best answer, unpause the video, and then we'll dive into the explanation. Okay. If you picked A, you are correct. Why? Okay, so for this, we want to request an interpreter. According to 1.03 informed consent, read the code of ethics, read the code of ethics, read the code of ethics. I'm gonna sound like a broken record. And before we dive into it, notice when we go back up to this question, right? This question didn't say anything about the code of ethics, right? It didn't mention a single thing about the code of ethics. It didn't mention a single thing about, according to the code of ethics, the social worker. The code of ethics is our blueprint, our guidebook. I have a series. I'm gonna link the playlist down in the description and in the comment section because it shows us how to navigate these type of situations when they pop up. Because again, we'll end up picking an answer that sounds good. But let's dive into it. So according to the NASW Code of Ethics 1.03 informed consent, letter B under 1.03. In instances when clients are not literate or have difficulty understanding the primary language used in the practice setting, social workers should take steps to ensure clients' comprehension. This may include providing clients with a detailed verbal explanation or arranging for a qualified interpreter or translator whenever possible. So when we're looking at this, again, this is showing us exactly what we should do and whether we're in an agency, organization, right? We don't want to just deny them services, and we'll jump into that in a second. But we want to find an interpreter, someone that can translate. Now, some people may say, well, how can we have the family member that's with them translate, right? If they're there with their spouse, right? How come we can't do that? So B, ask the client's family member to translate. That's incorrect. Why? It's not the family member's job to translate for the social worker. Also, we want to promote the accuracy of the message being communicated by all parties. Getting a qualified interpreter would be the best course of action because remember, an interpreter, a translator, that's their profession. They're a professional at doing that, which is the translating. And we want to make sure that the message that's being conveyed is accurate and that, again, it's understood by all parties involved. And we don't want to just deny them services. And jumping into that, which is C, which is also incorrect, of inform the client that services cannot be provided due to the language barrier. Incorrect. Why? So according to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, mandates that no one be denied publicly funded services based on national origin. This includes clients who are non-English speaking or have limited English proficiency. United States Department of Labor. When caring for clients who have limited English proficiency, social workers should maintain awareness of their own cultural own cultural beliefs and any biases or stereotypes they may hold that can negatively influence the quality of the client care being provided. In order to give informed consent for treatment, the client must understand the risk and benefits of the treatment. Informed consent documents signed by clients who are non-English speaking and who were not provided with appropriate language assistance may be considered invalid. Informed consent documents should be available in the client's language whenever possible. When not possible, evidence of the verbal interpretation of the consent forms should be documented in the client's file. Thorough documentation of the use of interpretive services is important because it provides evidence of the effort made to increase client understanding of treatment information. It can be useful in cases of malpractice, medical errors, and claims of lack of informed consent. Also, just scrolling back up a bit to this one right here. In order to give informed consent for treatment, the client must understand the risk and benefits of treatment. Pause right there for a second. This isn't part of the question, but remember, when a client gives informed consent, just like with the DSM disorders, if you guys saw that, those videos I made on my channel about reading it backwards, informed consent, what is that about? Consent, which is the permission, which is informed consent. Read it backwards. Consent that is informed. What does it mean when someone gives consent? That's giving permission to engage in something, right? And in this context, the client gives us, the social worker, the professional, informed consent to participate in services, right? So for them to give their consent, we want to make sure that they're informed. So that's when they talk about the social worker going over all the risks, the benefits that come with the services being provided, what to expect, like literally from A to Z, the whole rundown of everything. Now think about when a client can't give informed consent. When they're under the influence, they're not in their right state of mind. A client under the influence can't give informed consent because, again, they're impaired. Their judgment is impaired because they're under the influence, right? So keep those things in mind. If there's a cognitive impairment, right, and let's say the social worker is meeting with an adult client and they're going over the risk and the benefits of services, and even if the client is agreeing, shaking her head like, yep, but it's said within the question that the social worker doesn't truly believe that the client understands what's being said, like what's being explained, but the client is just kind of like, yep. The social worker would want to, in that case, again, going back up to that informed consent piece of what it is, it's in the rest of it. The social worker will want to seek a third party that has the client's best interest at heart. In that case, it will be a spouse, a family member. If that client with the cognitive impairment has their own social worker, let's say, we're not just going to have them come into treatment, participate in treatment and stuff, because again, they can't really give informed consent, which is the client giving themselves permission to participate in services, if they haven't necessarily been informed properly, accurately by the social worker for whatever the reason, whether the client is under the influence, they're not in the right state of mind, or there's a cognitive impairment, they're not really truly understanding what's being said and explained to them. We want to do our due diligence as the social worker, as a professional, someone putting the client's best interest at heart by, going through those different avenues, which in that case, seeking a third party to help explain things to that client. Okay, tribe, that was it for today's video. Again, that was RayTube practice question number 27. Just, like I always say, doing at least 2 practice questions a day helps keep the exam anxiety at bay. And more practice we do, the less our anxiety is heightened. And also, it gets us really familiar with, what to expect on the exam. Still do our studying of actually, understanding the information, whether we talk about the DSM stuff, the code of ethics stuff, read the code of ethics, the theories, like all of that stuff, the interventions, right? While we're doing that studying, getting the information, keep doing the practice questions because we want to familiarize ourselves with what it's going to look like and see how the information that we're studying is going to be presented in question form on the exam. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell a social work friend because we don't want to be licensed by ourselves. Study groups every Saturday, so check the link in the description for all the details, and I hope to see you there. All right, tribe.